In a prior video, we demonstrated how to do an FTP port here, and I've temporarily unenlisted that. So let's go back and turn it back on. So actually, just to recap how we were doing it, we had a send port group, and that group had two ports, demo map out and demo map out FTP. And so what we're going to do is re-enable this. And what that's saying there is I have to enable the port first. So one of these ports in the group has to be started before I start the group itself. Okay. Now, what the purpose of this video is actually for is to show you how you can have a backup protocol. So here we had FTP as our main protocol, and even the name of the port was demo map out FTP. And when we configured that, we've actually already proven that this works. But what happens if, for instance, we come in here and let's change the website here to XXX, okay? So there is no such server now. So what you can do is, I think we've already talked about this, but if not, let's recap. You can say I want to retry 3 times every 5 minutes, or you can say I want to retry whatever, 10 times every 1 minute. And you can set this at whatever intervals you want. Then at the end of all these retries, what it's going to do is then going to try the backup transport. And so what you can essentially do is have 2 different protocols on the same port, the primary and the backup. And so in this case, my primary is FTP. But if the FTP doesn't work after, and I'm going to go back to say 3 times every 1 minute, then I want to back up and just send it to a flat file on my machine. Okay, so let's go back to my disk over here and create a new directory. So this was something, well, I don't think we even have this directory. So let's just call this backup when FTP is down directory. So I'm going to copy that directory name and paste it right here. And again, we'll call this the FTP backup to file. And then it also has a retry count. After this many retries, basically your message would be suspended. If it can't write to the FTP and it can't write to the file either, your message would just be suspended. So that's all we need to do except test this. So the FTP should now fail. And let's just double check what kind of message we need to drop to get this to test. We have a filter here on a certain type of message called what? Standard purchase order. Okay, been a while since I've tested this variation here. Okay, here's the file I found with standard purchase order. And I think it was going to go to map demo in. Okay, so we're going to go to the map demo in directory, and we're going to copy this file here. And this is not using an orchestration. This is just straight message-based routing. Let's go see what HAT says. So notice that we actually did run an orchestration, but that's not the purpose of this video. We do see, however, we have a port here. It says started, and it didn't finish. And it says unable to connect to FTP site in walters.net XXX. So we can see that there's going to be a problem here, right? And so now it's going to retry this every 1 minute for 3 times. And we can watch that happen by going to the application event viewer. And it's 5:02:19, so in 3 minutes I'll come back and show you what's happened here. Okay, so now our 3 or 4 minutes have passed, and let's check out these messages. So here it tells us we can't write to the FTP site, and then we see basically the exact same message 3 or 4 times in a row, actually 3 times. The 4th time, a message going to so-and-so is being moved to the backup transport because you weren't able to connect to the FTP server. Okay, so it says here basically that I'm moving it to the backup. I failed over. In other words, the primary transport FTP was not available, And so it says it is being moved to the backup transport. So now if we go to disk and we look here, you can also see the time, date and time here. It's 17:05. So you can see that our messages started at 02, 03, 04, and then 05 is when the message finally got written to my disk because the FTP was not available. And of course it's a standard message like this, and if the FTP site would have been up, it would have gone there. The reason again it didn't go to the FTP site was I simulated the FTP site being down by temporarily just faking out the system here, and I changed the name. Actually, that's not it. Sorry. This one. I put the XXX in here. So now if I take the XXX out and I submit the same file again, go to demo map in, copy the file, check hat. You see now it ran just fine and actually did go to the FTP site because the FTP site was now correct. So the backup transport only happens when the primary transport is for whatever reason unavailable. And a good example is an FTP site. Suppose you're sending a message to another company and for whatever reason they can't keep their FTP site up and running, and so when their site's down, you just keep retrying, and you can actually reset your retry to do 1,000 times every hour if you want to. And then if after that many times it fails, you write it to your own hard disk, and then you have a business process set up where somehow you call that company and find out why their FTP is not working. So in this video we've demonstrated the backup protocol, which one more time, you come to the FTP and you go to backup transport. My primary transport on the general tab is FTP. Then I set up my what they call advanced options, how many times I want it to try the FTP, and after this many retries it will then write the file to the backup transport, which in this case is my own disk.